Now we need to discuss the form and architecture of a mosque. Now I've done the same with cathedrals and temples, so I feel it only appropriate to do that with a mosque because it's not a form that most people in the Western world are going to be particularly familiar with. So when we look at a basic mosque, and this is called a hypostyle mosque. So in this case, we have a large area with columns holding up a flat roof. And we have a couple of different ideas that you need definitions of. First of all, at one end, or sometimes there will be multiple forms of minaret. These are towers where you will see the prayer call is sounded. They will call prayer from there for people near the mosque. They will also alert people to the fact that it is time for prayer from there. And this is often a human voice. So when you see minarets that are particularly large, they're oftentimes not there for function, but they're going to be there for symbolism, to show the power of Islam in a specific place. Oftentimes, these mosques, and these are usually in the Middle East or North Africa, will have a large open courtyard. This is really common in these climates. You can use a large open courtyard for flexible space, for gathering space. If the weather's good, why not make use of it instead of covering it and having to worry about things like heating or cooling or comfort level? Just leave it to the outside. Keep in mind, they're not air conditioning any of these, although there are architectural elements that will work as natural air conditioners, but we won't be getting into that here. There's always going to be a fountain or water available somewhere in the courtyard. This is going to be for ritualistic cleansing prior to walking into the prayer area. You're going to have a woman's area in many mosques, not in all, but in many mosques, women will be separated from the men. And often they and the children will be on a gallery level above the rest of the parishioners. The reason for this is if you put the women above, just like we see, for example, in late antiquity and medieval Europe, if you put the women up above, then the men can't look at them. And so they get rid of that distraction. And it's felt that the women aren't going to be looking down at the men, well, let's say in the same way. There's going to be an imam, the head of the mosque, who leads the prayer. He's going to be up front. There's going to be a minbar, which is the pulpit from which a sermon is issued. So it's a pulpit just like in the Western tradition. There's also going to be a mihrab, which we will get to in a moment. And then in this hypostyle hall, you're going to see congregational prayers being given. So this is where people would go if you wanted to go to the mosque to pray. Under certain circumstances, they may also use the courtyard for such purposes. The mihrab is always near the minbar, so the minbar would be right next to it here. And that's the niche where the Quran is held, is kept. And it's no different than what we see in Jewish tradition, where there's usually a special place for the Torah, Christian tradition, where you have a tabernacle, which houses the Eucharist. So it's the same sort of idea. There's always a qibla, not a term that we're going to use a lot, but that is the wall oriented towards Mecca, so that you can provide your prayers in the direction of Mecca. And we've discussed these other forms. Here's the spelling for hypostyle hall. Now, this only applies to these hypostyle form mosques, where you have a large flat roof covering a large enclosed space held up by a forest of columns. There's another form, which is a domed mosque, which usually is going to be a much larger mosque. And this is something we see really coming about during the Ottoman Empire. And here, the prayer hall is going to be covered by a large dome, so we no longer have that forest of columns. It means that sound can travel better, the visual lines are better. It works better to bring together a large group of people. After all, think about how we use domes today. We usually use them either in a religious context, housing a great many people, or in a sports arena, doing the same thing. And these domed mosques will still use the courtyard idea and maintain that fountain and everything else. Some large mosques will have madrasas, which are religious schools. Very, very common. And an example of the dome mosque, of course, is going to be the Mosque of Selim II in Istanbul, where we see that massive dome which allows for an incredible open space that can house many thousands of people.